Hey there, Timberwolves. Miss Rebellino here, coming in with your Unit 1 test review on Texas regions and its natural people. So let's go ahead and let's get this started. All right, so coming in with the first part, we're going to be looking at the regions of Texas. Do you remember what they are? Okay, let's go through. You have mountains and basins, the Great Plains, North Central Plains, and the Coastal Plains. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at each one and kind of see where they are. So Mountains and Basins is located in the western part of Texas. Here, we're going to see that this area is made up of plateaus, basins, and mostly deserts make up the geographical area. One of the major rivers in this area is the Rio Grande on the far west side by New Mexico. Some of these areas that we're starting to see are some of these pictures. Taking a look, very dry desert is made up with the geographical features of this particular area. Big Bend Ranch State Park is one of the major attractions in this area, and I actually have a really cool video that I would like to show you. Oops, I'm sorry. So taking a look over here, we're going to start seeing all the desert life. So cactus, very little rain. They say about 8 inches of rain a year. High elevation in this particular area, just keeping in mind as you move further west out into Texas, the elevation gets higher and higher, keeping in mind that the mountain ranges behind them are one of the reasons why. But amazing, beautiful video here that I'm happy to share with you. So to watch the full video, you can go ahead and you can go onto Canvas and actually see this PowerPoint and go at your own pace if you'd like. All right, so next is the Great Plains. Keeping in mind the Great Plains is located in the northern part of Texas, more towards the west. The Great Plains is generally flat and it doesn't have trees. It's also known as the High Plains, keeping in mind the high elevation the further you go west. And it's also known as the Sea of Grass. Pretty cool. Now, here's a cool little video I want to show you about the Great Plains, a little drone video in this particular area. So again, high elevation. So major industry in this particular area would be livestock. So we'll kind of see a lot of that. In this particular part of Texas, we're starting to see it grow substantially quickly. And they're expecting a huge boom of industries within ranching. So again, to watch the full video, you can go ahead on here and just kind of take a look. So to the east of the Great Plains, you have the North Central Plains. In this particular area, we have a lot more water starting to go down in elevation, and farming and livestock are the main industries in this particular area. In this area, they also tend to have a lot of bad weather, like tornadoes, but very plentiful with farming and livestock. This particular area, we're going to start to see some major cities like Fort Worth is a big city in this area, and Waco. So again, take a look, very different from the others, a lot more trees. Okay, so livestock and farming are definitely the big areas here. And coming to our region, the coastal plains. So this particular area, the Gulf Coast, is a nearly level. Again, keeping in mind the elevation is coming down, slowly drained plain. It is big with streams and rivers flowing into the Gulf of Mexico. The climate here is hot and humid, and it is heavily populated because of all these rivers and the access to the Gulf, which then leads to the Atlantic. So Houston is one of the big five, the top five natural ports in the United States. So here's just a little video to kind of show you about what the plains in the Gulf of Texas look like. As you can tell, looking at the videos, very different, huge differences between from the west side of Texas to the east side of Texas. Here we have a lot more rainfall, so we tend to see very different vegetation and a lot more wildlife in this particular area. Also keeping in mind lower level, lower sea levels. So again, keeping in mind the elevation going west goes up, but coming from the west to the east, the elevation goes down. If you remember, draining. So we have the plains draining into the Gulf Coast. So cities in West Texas, we're going to be looking at El Paso, keeping in mind it's in the mountains and basin regions. Do you know what kind of climate we're looking at again? If you said desert, you're right. Okay, so El Paso is the most populous city in this particular region. The attractions areas are going to be the natural resources, such as Big Bend National Park. Okay, cities in East Texas, as you can tell, are very different. Densely populated due to the waterways, again, going down into the Gulf. Major urban cities located in this area are San Antonio, Houston, and Austin. Do you know which one's which? There's Houston. Can you tell which one is San Antonio? How about Austin? Can you find Austin? Great job. Now let's find Dallas. Keeping in mind, if you haven't noticed, the areas that are highly populated are the big red ones. Keeping in mind, we're looking at those rivers that are located in these particular areas. So if you got them right, good for you. Keeping in mind, San Antonio is going to be lower than Austin. So cities in Southeast Texas, we're starting to see further south is going to be Brownsville, Texas. This area is highly populated, very cultural. Some big industries here are maquiladoras, which are big shops that make things that we like sneakers. This particular area is bordering with the Rio Grande, which is a natural border to Texas. So very cool. All right, rivers of Texas. So all rivers empty into the Gulf of Mexico, or at least we could say all major rivers. So all major cities are located near rivers. Can you kind of take a look? Where's Austin? Along the Colorado River, San Antonio along the San Antonio River, and then Houston by the Brazos River, and Dallas on the Trinity River. And if you can follow them all down, they go into the Gulf. So one thing that's really cool about Texas is that they are, Texas is shaped uniquely because of the rivers. The Red River on the northern part, which is by Oklahoma, the Sabine River by Louisiana, and the Rio Grande by Mexico. So these rivers, RSR is the best way to remember them. R for Red River, S for Sabine River, and R for Rio Grande River. So know these rivers, these are important. They are our natural borders. So the states surrounding Texas, we have four of them. The best way to remember this is the word loan, Loan. L for Louisiana to the east of Texas, O for Oklahoma to the north, A for Arkansas to the northeast, and N for New Mexico to the west. Native American cultures in Texas, keeping in mind, were in these particular regions. When we talked about the regions and how they looked, these Native Americans had to adapt and move around. So the major ones we're looking at are the Puebloan, the Plains, the Southeastern culture, and the Gulf. Take a look at this map and see where they're located. How do you think these Native Americans adapted to these cultures? What was it like in these areas? We kind of did an activity on this. Let's go ahead and let's dig a little deeper. So in the Pueblo area, the culture, as we can tell, these Pueblo Indians were farmers, okay, also hunted buffalo and other game. They lived in West Texas in houses. So because they built houses, these Native Americans were sedentary, which means they did not move. They stayed in this area, traded jewelry and pottery. The Plains Indians were nomadic. They hunted buffalo and other game in the Great Plains. The Southeastern culture are Native Americans that were semi-sedentary. What that means is that they moved around a little bit here and there. They would stay in one place for longer periods of time, so they had semi-permanent houses. Many of the natives were farmers who practiced crop rotation, which meant that they can keep their crops growing for a long time, and they also lived in pretty interesting grass houses. And the Western Gulf area, Native Americans lived in the Gulf area. So these Native Americans hunted with canoes and lived off the Gulf Coast. They were nomadic, following their food, and they used dugout trees to build their canoes to hunt things like turtles and alligator. Would you eat that? I don't know. So, Pueblo culture, taking a deeper look, they were sedentary. They built these houses called adobe houses. They, again, traded and crafted specific jewelry, settled near the Rio Grande. So, I'm going to show you that video I showed you earlier. I'm only going to play a few seconds of it so you can kind of take a look. Keeping in mind, the Rio Grande River was the big river by these Pueblo Indians. Take a look. Dry mountains, basins. Taking a look at the adobe houses, we're taking a look that these were built out of clay from the Rio Grande River. Can you see yourself taking that house down? I don't think so. So as you can tell, sedentary, permanent housing. Okay, so the Plains culture. So these Native Americans, again located in the northern plains, were nomadic. They moved. So their houses had to be able to be built quickly and taken down. They were nomadic hunter-gatherers. They followed bison, and what they lived in was teepees. So here's a quick little video that talks about how they lived. Let's take a look at the teepees. Again, quick to put up, quick to take down. Okay, for the full video, you can go onto Canvas and take a look at that. All right, let's take a look at our next one, the southeastern culture. Keeping in mind this is in the northern part of Texas to the east, going towards Arkansas. So these particular Native Americans, again, were semi-sedentary, which means they did move around, but they stayed in one place a little bit longer. They were big on farming and hunting and crop rotation, which meant they were able to go ahead and stay longer. They made and traded pottery along the Mississippi River, and large dome-shaped homes made of grass is kind of where they lived. So here's a quick little video that kind of talks about that. Okay, and moving on to our last Native American culture is the Gulf culture, where we are. So these Native Americans lived in the Gulf area of Texas. Along in the low elevated areas. They were nomadic and they used canoes to get around, keeping in mind hunting local wildlife. Uh, Part of their diet was deer, but mostly shellfish, turtles, alligators. Keeping in mind because they were nomadic, they had to go ahead and build houses that were quick to put up and quick to take down. So this concludes our review, and I hope this really helped you. If you have any questions, just keep in mind you can go ahead and do the review sheet, which is up on Canvas, and you can reach out to me with any other questions you may have. I wish you luck, and I will see you later. All right, bye.